What's up, y'all? As you're adding theater performances to your end of the year calendar, remember in Chicago, you ain't just got to watch the shows, but you can also be a part of them. And that's probably no truer than at the Second City's Etc. Theater for Best Kept Secret Tell Everyone. The 6-person ensemble takes everything you know and love about the iconic venue, the sketches, the songs, the dances, the improv, and delivers a one-of-a-kind experience Thursdays through Sundays. Tickets are available now at secondcity.com. This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a global streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema. Starting today, catch the streaming premiere of The Substance. Demi Moore delivers a career-best performance as an A-lister past her prime, transformed by a mysterious drug into a gorgeous 20-something played by Margaret Qualley. It's a deliriously entertaining and spine-tingling masterpiece. You can start streaming The Substance and more for 30 days free at Mubi.com/CityCast. Today on CityCast Chicago, how could this week's election results impact Chicago? Plus, Alders sound off on the proposed property tax hike and ways we're disconnecting from doom scrolling, if even for a moment. Joining me to break it all down, the Tribe's editor-in-chief, Tiffany Walden, and Axios Chicago reporter, Carrie Shepard. It's Friday, November 8th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Morning, my friends. Tiffany, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Always good to see you, my friend. Always good to have you on the show. And we are joined by, it's still weird to say Axios reporter Carrie Shepard after saying CityCast Chicago producer Carrie Shepard for so long. But, you know, I've gotten mostly used to it. Carrie, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Yeah, I'm still kind of getting used to it. It's been more than a year, so I'm happy to see all of you, all your faces.
For anybody who is listening now, who is new to the podcast, welcome. We appreciate you being here. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, talking about the stories that matter to us across the city of Chicago. And when I say across, I mean all neighborhoods. We love to sit down with these amazing voices. Every single Friday, we bring in our friends to break down stories that were on our front page of our newspapers, stories that were on the back pages, and everything in between. But before we get into the conversation, the three of us live our lives, our daily lives, both professional and personal in many ways, knee deep in the news. And obviously, with the election this week, we were overtime, buried in many ways. So before we jump into looking back, I want to ask, what are some ways that y'all are like prioritizing, just like sitting still for a moment this weekend, taking some time to yourself? Carrie, I'm gonna start with you. What's something you're doing for yourself this weekend?
Well, I am going to try a new yoga class, a new hot yoga class. I just ran into a guy who runs a yoga studio, and he's a neighbor, and he gave me a coupon to try it, ritual yoga. But I'm also trying this new thing where you don't reach for your phone right away when you wake up and like immediately start looking at email, looking at Slack. So I'm trying to wait until at least after we walk the dog, Zuzu, our dog, which is my 100%, actually only source of joy right now, but I'll say primary source of joy. So I'm trying to like wait until at least after the dog walk so I can like take in the day before everything starts to fall down on my shoulders. So that's something I'm trying to work on.
Yoga, putting the phone down for just a little bit when you start your day. I like that. Tiffany, what about you? What is something you are doing in the very near future to try your best to disconnect? I know it's like a false idea, disconnect, when we are really living our lives, right? Our lives are deeply interconnected with the news, what's going on in our communities and our interpersonal. But what's something you're doing to try to feign disconnect for a moment?
You know, I haven't even gotten there yet. I'm still just recovering from Tuesday. But one of the things I think I'm going to do is just sit in quiet and possibly read. I'm reading Ta-Nehisi's book. And I'm also reading another book called The Man Who Could Move the Clouds. And so Yeah, I think I'm just gonna sit down and be quiet and read and not move, not answer the phone.
Good. Nice.
I've been trying to do a better job of scheduling time to read. Like it's on my calendar, like Wednesday, 7 a.m. I'm trying to get through Hanif Abdul Rakib's last amazing book. And so I hear you 100%. Like, if I'm being honest with myself, like actually sitting still and like even when I'm on my phone, even if I'm not like scrolling the news, like reading, like sharing articles, I'm like in a phone game trying to just like disconnect. But the idea of like really sitting in silence for a moment is something I have not leaned into, but I'm going to try to. Well, obviously the thing that most of us have been sitting with this week is Donald Trump was named president-elect of the United States. VP Kamala Harris did give a concession speech. Republicans, as it seems, did win back the Senate, currently still hold their majority in Congress. Tiffany, what was your reaction to the news this week after spending so much time in the lead up, sort of preparing people through election guides, hitting the streets, hearing what people had to say, looking at the long lines across the city? What were your reaction to these results?
You know, I have a lot of feelings about it that I'm still navigating through because, you know, a lot of us still remember 2016, and I think that moment was so shocking and unbelievable from my generation, at least, because, you know, Obama, a lot of us was our first election, 2007, 2008, that was our first election. So to see 2016 happen, it was like, wow, how could this possibly even happen to us? But this time around, I prepared myself so I wouldn't be upset, and I'm still upset.
I hear you.
And like the thing that I'm really thinking about is like a twofold thing of watching how people voted, like seeing the numbers demographically of who voted for who. That's been a little bit hard to deal with, and it's made me think about history and, you know, how historically Black people have become isolationists after moments like this, and a lot of that has been going on the timeline right now. So I've been thinking about that. And at the same time, thinking about the Democratic Party and how they have just completely ignored what their base has wanted for the past two elections, possibly three. And so it was inevitable that we were going to reach this point, but it's hard to actually witness it or to live through it.
There was sort of a moment during 2016 where even as I like understood what was taking place around me, I still allowed myself to be like, are we not all watching the same thing? But this time around, it's like we all knew these things about Trump: the history of sexual abuse, the unethical and illegal business practices, the multitude of national security risks, flagrant discussion of punishing political opponents, the incoherent communication of a very deeply white supremacist and theocratic platform, no real policies positions besides tax breaks for the wealthy, cutting spending on social programs, dismantling national institutions, mass deportation, and of course, further inciting racist, sexist, and transphobic ideologies, while all the while grifting the whole time, just selling products, throwing out misinformation, blatant lies, you know, on every stage he was offered. You know, Carrie, like with all of that in tow, even as some of us prepared ourselves with what felt inevitable, what was your reaction?
It's so interesting, Tiffany, that you said it, and then Jacoby, you too, about 2016 and how Obama was your first presidential election you could vote in. Obama was my third, I think. But I talked to people yesterday, sort of around our neighbors and friends and stuff, and they said the same thing. 2016 was such this guttural, like, what's going on? Who is this person? Is this the guy from The Apprentice? What's happening? Da 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 da. You know, and then this time, sort of sadly, you were more prepared. Like you were kind of like, oh, well, I know. I mean, he's a convicted felon, but I know a convicted felon is about to become president.
Particularly, he's a convicted felon for like money laundering and convicted on sexual abuse charges and convicted on like national security implications. Like, right. Because like convicted felon, right. People have thrown that around in a way throughout this election cycle. And I think the lack of nuance there sort of played into.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. We're in a blue blob in Chicago and Cook County, so it's easy for us to be really myopic and be like, well, what? We know Harris is going to win Illinois, et cetera. But here's a little anecdote. We were walking the dog yesterday, and we came up to a guy walking his dog, and the dog stopped. The dog is cute. And he was looking at us, and he got really close to us, and he said, wasn't that just great last night? Wasn't that just amazing last night? And my husband and I thought he was being sarcastic, right? And so we both sort of looked at him, and then he just kept walking, and we were like deer in headlights, and we were like, I don't think he's joking. I think he's very serious. And then that is just my own naivete. I mean, I watch the polls, I look at the numbers, everything, but of like in Chicago in our blue blob, we're like, yes, Mount Greenwood, Edison Park, Norwood Park, city worker neighborhoods go red. This is traditional. But I think even since 2016, I've thought a lot about like, that's not true. It's everywhere. There's Trump supporters everywhere. But I just think it's really easy to get trapped in our own bubbles and forget that, you know, these are our neighbors. Our neighbors are not all supporting the same ideals and beliefs that we are.
This cycle, this summer down to this fall has been very eye-opening for me because I've had multiple conversations with Black people about Trump, various ages down to, you know, my 20-some-year-old nephew. Because, you know, they're on social media, particularly TikTok, saying things with the migrant humanitarian crisis that's, you know, bringing a lot of alarm and xenophobia along with it in the Black community. And so I think it was grossly underestimated by the Democratic Party of just where people are and like the everyday average person in this city or in any city, like what their daily experience is. And people are crying out and people are saying, you know, that we don't have money, we don't have this, we don't have that. But the Democratic Party is platforming and campaigning off of the middle class, and you know, we're going to get everybody to the middle class, and we're going to get the middle class to be thriving, and all this, you know, this, that, and the third one. It's like, you know, those people are maybe probably already going to vote for you, but the folks who are the folks who are the ones that's overlooked, that's who Trump is like getting. You know, these are the people that said like, Trump gave me money. We know the truth behind that. For me, it was just hard to watch this campaign happen. As much as I wanted to be hopeful about it, it was hard to watch it happen because on the streets, like you just experienced, Carrie, on the streets, people are saying like, no, like these people do not align with what I'm on. Trump aligns with what I'm on. And it's hard in journalism because it's like, you know, it's hard to figure out how to cover that too without platforming him. But it's just a really weird place to be in. And it's, as an industry, I feel like we have to figure out how to move forward from here.
But also like the middle class doesn't mean the same thing to the Democratic Party that is shouting that it does to the average person. The middle class doesn't mean the same thing as it did 10, 20 years ago or whatever, you know? So it's like, there's so many people on the periphery of the quote unquote middle class that don't connect with those ideals at all. You know, like it's such a catch-all term that agreed the Democrats didn't dig into, you know, in a smart way.
Our friends over at WBEZ and I know Axios Chicago did some reporting around like what could this election, what could a Republican Senate majority, Donald Trump in the White House mean? And they focused on things, everything from infrastructure investments, like what is the future of the red line extension and lead pipe removals that so heavily rely on federal dollars in increasing austerity? Like What does it mean for social investments, federal aid for new arrivals, community-based public safety initiatives, more money for public schools? We saw in 2016 and afterwards rollback of environmental protections, trans and LGBTQ protections, immigrant protections. Even as Illinois remains a safe or relatively safer place to access reproductive health care, we know that surrounding us, it's only going to get more difficult for individuals. And so there is a lot to grapple with. We also had, for the first time ever, Chicago's school board election, an election that saw over $7 million poured into it. Carrie, you were following the school board election, which we've all covered and said got oversimplified into this sort of CTU versus charter school like conversation. However, it is a narrative that a lot of people leaned into and latched onto. What were your reactions to the results this week?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is a very black and white way but that is sort of kind of the only way you could see who was behind the candidates, and endorse the candidates was this funding. And it did break down to CTU-backed candidates versus school choice candidates. And then obviously there were some independents. There were some folks, there was a group called CPS Parents for Buses. And these were, parents of students who lost their bus service. And they backed a few of the candidates. But it got very odd, yeah. And it became like it's sort of some of the literature. I don't know if you saw some of the campaign flyers. They were kind of accusing lifelong Democrats of being MAGA and, Project 2025 supporters. But at the same token, like I would get these spam texts that were like gifs of Brandon Johnson and a fire. And it was like, a vote for this candidate is just a vote for Brandon Johnson.
I got a bunch of mailers of people like latched on looking like puppets and sync video.
Yeah, exactly.
The way they went back and forth in the weeks leading up to it was, it's like you said, it was hard to read this election as anything other.
But then it did really become a referendum on Mayor Johnson because of the tumult and problems happening at the current board, where you had his previous handpicked Board of Education resign because they disagreed with what became a storyline of CPS CEO Pedro Martinez said that the mayor asked him to resign. The mayor said, no, I didn't. Then it became that the mayor was seeking this, high interest loan of $300 million to pull CPS's budget to help fill CPS's budget hole. So it did become a bit of a referendum on him as well. I think that both sides kind of claim victory in the sense that Chicago Teachers Union backed candidates, like I think there were 3 or 4, soon to be 4. The 4th one was leading. I don't think it's been called yet. And then the kind of school choice charter folks, like 3 or 4 of their candidates were elected, and then there were a couple more of the quote unquote independents not backed by either side. So, but they sort of all claim like, look, we got our folks on the board. And honestly, in a democratic process, that's kind of what it should be, right?
At this point, there's still I think some uncertainty in a couple of races, even though there are some leads. So please follow our colleagues at Chalkbeat, WBZ, The Sun Times, and of course, Chicago.citycast.fm. Of course, at this point, we do not know what the final school board is going to look like. Mayor Brandon Johnson still gets to pick 11 members, including the school board president. And so there's likely, given that we're knee deep in budget season right now, going to be some time before we know what the final makeup is and who's going to be sworn in come January. Speaking of budget season, this week, as elections were happening, city council members came together for the start of budget hearings. Last week, Mayor Brandon Johnson announced a $17.3 billion budget. There's a lot in the 600 plus page document, but the thing that really grabbed most people's attention was the $300 million property tax hike, I believe, second largest in the last couple of decades. And Mayor Brandon Johnson, his administration has explained This was a necessary financial move to stay in line with our pension obligations, which we just did reran our episode on, but also to stay in line with his desire for social investments. Carrie, that meeting got a little bit contentious. I think maybe close to 40, something like 37 alders have come out in some form or fashion and said they cannot support a property tax hike. I mean, this was a campaign promise that was always, I kept saying it was always going to be hard to keep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was it is fair though to push back on your public officials when they make such a bold declarative statement like I'm the only candidate who will not raise property taxes, which, as to your point, is a total fool's errand to even say that, because, you know, where else are you going to get the money? We were in the throes of the humanitarian migrant crisis that, you know, and among many other things. So, of course, everyone's going to latch onto that. And the reason alders are going to latch onto it is because their constituents are going to say, you supported this. My taxes are already really high. This is going to put them even higher. How could you vote for that? I should also say that bluster from alders that's kind of the pomp and circumstance of this process. They go back then and department heads, you know, the Department of Cultural Affairs, Streets and Sands, et cetera, they do these meetings, they do these hearings, they say what they need, what they can give up. And you know what happens? They all vote for it. I mean, they all vote for it. And, you know, maybe you get a 49-1 or, you know, 48-2. Is that going to happen this time? This may be one of the very few times where it could be a question because, you know, Johnson is struggling with the goodwill of his council. You know, there's a lot of division right now, but it's a pretty easy thing for alders and anyone else to come out against is higher property taxes.
100%.
That's a pretty easy thing to complain about. But the pension crisis, you kick that can down the road. Like, how far can you kick it? There's got to be an end of the road. There's got to be a cul-de-sac there, right? Like,
there is state legislation that says we have to come within like 90% of fully funding our pensions. I think 2055 on a couple, 2058 on the others. There's a $240+ million pension payment factored into Johnson's budget, which some alders are saying, you know, maybe we should use that to fill the budget gap. However, our pensions right now are hovering under 30% fully funded. And so, as you said, kicking this can is probably not in the mayor's best interest. Tiffany, Mayor Brandon Johnson spent a lot of time in his budget address lauding his early accomplishments in the first 18 months, investing more in community-based and public health-based responses to mental health crisis calls, opening up new mental health facilities, increasing investment on youth jobs. For you, how much do you feel like this next budget is in line with his other campaign promises for increased social investments?
Yeah, I think the mayor's office right now just has a problem with communicating their achievements and how those achievements directly impact the people that voted him into office. All of those things you just named, Jacoby, are things that his base asked for. Those are things that organizers, things that progressives here in this city wanted out of him, and they're getting those things. Now, you know, of course, he's having to do a balancing act here with the police budget. You know, we're seeing an increase with that. We're seeing him talk about he didn't want to make cuts to the police budget or to fire and all of those different things. And again, his base wanted him to make those cuts to the police budget, especially. But at the end of the day, like, you know, it needs to be communicated more and shown and understood more that when you invest in people, since that's his tagline, what does that mean? What is the return on investment for that? The youth jobs with Good Kids Mad City, I think they hired like 100 people over the summer. Has crime went down because of that? Are we seeing less violence or less interactions or confrontations happening because of that? These are the things that, you know, I think if his administration actually communicated, we would, you know, be having some different conversations here in terms of what to invest in. And then the second thing for me too is this is a time to see what the aldermen are on, to be honest. Like, in Corley and Tonia's story, you got Monique Scott saying that, low key, the peace book and mental health, that's not going to drive our economy. So when
those are not top priorities.
Right. Though that's not going to bring us money. So when you have an older person saying something like that in a neighborhood on the West Side that clearly is in need of community care, community policing, mental health services, what is that Alder saying? What does that mean when they say something like that? So at this point, to Carrie's point, they're all going to eventually, if the property taxes are going to go up, there's no other revenue stream, which is another conversation. But it's also a time to sit back and be like, okay, if y'all elect this older person has been in this neighborhood for however long, Emma Mintz has been in this neighborhood for however long, what is she talking about? What is she on? What is she gonna propose to improve her community, improve her neighborhood? And that's what I would like to see the press here in Chicago really go and look into, is like the Alders and how are things moving from City Hall into these specific wards and neighborhoods.
And that's such an interesting point, because there were moments crime went down. That wasn't very reported. And something, it may seem trite, but, the mayor was doing these like weekly activation things in various neighborhoods, and they were like block party type of things. And I always was like, I don't feel like that gets enough attention. I mean, if you look at the mayor's public schedule, he is out there. He's in the neighborhoods. He's talking to people, which every mayor promises to do.
And when it comes down to it and people get ready to vote, people going to be able to say, like, dude showed up at my house.
Mm-hmm.
He knocked on my door. He showed up at my school. He did this. He did that. And that's what's going to really matter. Not this such and such is falling out with the mayor today and they left the office. Like, come on, y'all.
Budget hearings will continue through the weekend, going all the way up until Monday, November 18th. I'll drop a full calendar in our show notes. Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends the exact same way, with me begging you to bring your ass back for the next episode. Right? But before we do that, we always end with some good news. Even during the tough weeks, even when our episodes are front loaded with bad news, we're always looking for something happening across our city, whether it's personal news, events we're looking forward to, something that brings us a little bit of joy. Tiffany, what is your good news for CityCast Chicago today?
I had to think really hard. But I've been holding on to the Stevie Wonder concert I got to go see last weekend, was that? Before the election. And it was a sight to see. I saw Usher too right before that. And then I saw Stevie Wonder. Both of them were really like shows that really gave flowers to legends, because Usher brought out Ron Isley, and then of course Stevie Wonder don't need anybody. He could just do it. And that was my first time seeing Stevie Wonder. I've seen Usher like 3 times, but yeah, like I've been listening to Stevie all week. He's really been getting me through this week. He's such a good performer, a legend, just extremely talented. And with the loss of Quincy Jones recently, like I'm just starting to realize how many of our like genius artists are getting older and like leaving this earth. So I hope everybody gets a chance to see the legends while they still can.
Yeah, I mean, the show was full of highlights. His daughter and son joined him on stage. He looked like he had a full orchestra there. Obviously, the set list is, 50 years of classics through and through. I'm glad you were able to share your experience. I also know that you got a birthday coming up next week.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Tiffany. Happy birthday, Tiffany.
Yes,
Happy birthday. We appreciate you making time, Tiffany, as always, to join us to talk, even on weeks like this one. It means the world to us.
Thank you. I appreciate being here always. And thank you for the birthday wishes.
Of course. Carrie, kicking it over to you. What is your good news for CityCast Chicago today?
Yeah, I love that Tiffany saw Stevie. That's so awesome. Okay, I've got a couple things. So Friday night, Monica Ang, my colleague, and I are playing ping pong it's a tournament to raise money for Jackson Chance Foundation, which supports families who have kids in the NICU. My husband's kids were actually in the NICU when they were born, so this is like something close to for a while, and this is close to my heart. I can't even tell you how bad I am at ping pong. I can't even tell you. I am so bad.
Like, are you like a champion?
Tiffany, no. God, no. I can't even tell you. Like, my friend was like, really? You're pretty good at tennis. And I was like, that ball is so damn small. So I'm really bad at it. So I'm sorry ahead of time to my teammates. And then Saturdays, I'm moderating a discussion about art and mental health. This is at Chicago Civics Day at Malcolm X College. These are some great, great artists who, teach people in the community and bring people together to use art like audio and visual arts to help people. It's part of the D Cases Healing Arts Initiative. So that's Saturday at noon, but the Civics Day Chicago is all day, and there's some great conversations, and it's free. And I think there's food too. So that's Saturday. So that's my good news. I'm excited for both those. I mean, I'm nervous as hell about the ping pong. I'm not going to lie. I'm so nervous about that. But I'm just like, I'm just there to have fun.
I participated in the city's first ever Civics Day last year. As you said, this year is going 9:30 to 4:30. Some names that I absolutely love are going to be there, including Chicago's first ever poet laureate, Avery R. Young, Chicago-based actor Melissa Dupree. They're going to have some sound meditation, some movement courses as well. So I'll drop a link to the full schedule in the show notes, and then you can pull up and see Carrie Shepard as well. I'm going to follow in both of y'all's shoes and double up on the good news. I got two events for people. One is happening tonight in Washington Park at the Green Line Performing Arts Center, Taking a Seat, Resistance and Agency in Public Spaces, a panel discussion featuring artist Adrienne Elise Tarver, historian Adam Green, journalist and friend Natalie Moore, and curator Janae Daria Strand. And then next week on Wednesday, Ink and Impact, the Power of Journalism panel discussing the evolving role of investigative journalism and local media and community storytelling is going to feature four voices that have all featured on the podcast, including Crystal Paul, Jackie Serrato, Salem Colo Julin, and Tribe co-founder Morgan Elise Johnson. We got a full slate of events for you that we're going to drop in our show notes. And if you're hungry for more, please go over to chicago.citycast.fm for our events calendar. And if you want even more, sign up to become a CityCast Chicago member, and we'll send you a special events email directly to your inbox on top of all the other things that we're trying to give you every single day in our little ecosystem. Please join me in giving a huge round of thank you for our guest today from the Tribe, Editor-in-Chief Tiffany Walden. Tiffany, always good to see you.
Thank you. Always good to see y'all. And I hope y'all get some self-care in this week, for real.
And join us in giving another huge thank you to Axios Chicago reporter Carrie Shepard.
Thank you. This really helped just to hear your guys' perspective and see you both. But I'm also so grateful and appreciative that two of you are out here covering Chicago. It's essential.
One more thing before we close the curtains today, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who helps make CityCast Chicago possible. Our executive producer is Simone Alicea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor is Sydney Madden. Roving producer Lizzie Goldsmith. The music we all love is from All the Kimonos, Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop, and the homie Sam Thousand. Now, I know some of y'all would love to download our theme song, but alas, you can only hear these particular Sam Thousand bangers on CityCast Chicago. And so hopefully you'll be back here bright and early on Monday to hear it all over again. I'll talk to you then. Peace.